Up, it's the men's horizontal bar final. Let's take a look at your contenders. Alexander Kunz of Germany, 7th best in qualification, his second World Cup event. Cameron Lynn of Great Britain, the Scottish champion on this piece. Ilya Lyubimov of Israel, 6th best in qualification. Alexander Myakinin of Israel, the 2nd best in qualification and the European Championship bronze medalist in 2020. Christopher Mizaros of Hungary, the 4th best in qualification. And the gymnast who already won 2 gold medals this weekend. Tiana Diallo of Spain, 5th best in qualification. Nestor Abad of Spain, the top performer in qualifying. Germany's Glenn Trebing, the 3rd best in qualification. Those are your 8 gymnasts going for men's horizontal bar gold. It could be a very positive finish this for the host nation, with Myakinin to perform. And he has got a very good record at World Cup level. Warm-ups to take place for the first 4. We've got the 2nd best qualifier in the first half, but then we have the 1st, 3rd, 4th and 5th best qualifiers in the second half of the final, so this one will keep us guessing right the way through to the conclusion. And you always have that element of unpredictability to a men's horizontal bar competition, where there are often some quite considerable upgrades thrown into the final. Cameron Lynn of Great Britain. Huge congratulations to him on his tremendous performance at the Scottish Artistic Gymnastics Championships earlier this year, where he won 5 gold medals. Finished 2nd in the all-around competition, and then he absolutely dominated the apparatus finals, winning floor, pommel horse, rings, parallel bars and this apparatus. Then went on to make several finals at the British Championships as well. As I'm sure many of you watching this know, the home nations of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland have their own domestic championships. Then there is a combined British Championships. So it's not always clear-cut and easy to talk about the national championships of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, because there is the overarching British Championships, but the individual home nations championships have great prestige attached to them as well. And then added to that, you have the fun complication of sometimes gymnasts competing in guest categories. So you'll get English gymnasts competing as guests at the Scottish Championships, Welsh gymnasts competing as guests at the English, and so on. And then you have also all of the constituent parts of the wider British Isles, such as the Channel Islands, and lovely gymnasts like Daniel Lee of Jersey, who was so impressive at the Commonwealth Games. And we've had a Commonwealth Games champion performing here in Georgia Godwin. We've got Mediterranean Games champions. Nastor Abad performing in the second half of the final. It is about time to begin. It's just hit 5 p.m. Tel Aviv time. But the sun a long way from setting on this competition. Just it is a long way from setting over the skyline of the city that never sleeps. We've got the horizontal bar final now to bring you. The first competitor in the men's horizontal bar final is Germany's Alexander Kunz, 7th best with a score of 11.55. Starts with real purpose to his swing. Pike to Kachev. And then a straddle Kachev. Oh, unfortunately for Alexander Kunz, the hands going down right at the last moments in that display. So a full mark lost. And there is going to be considerably higher difficulty to come in this final from the likes of Miakinin and from Mezaros particularly. But Miakinin is the gentleman that we really expect to see take a lead from a difficulty standpoint. He's quite piked as he lands, Kunz, and the gravity and kineticism didn't favour him. The first time that we've seen Alexander Kunz in a horizontal bar final at international levels. That's an important milestone for this 20-year-old. Much excitement for those gymnasts whose competition is now done. They can just sit and enjoy the last final, and it's always got a nice atmosphere, the men's high bar final, because you get a lot of people who finish their competitions coming out and joining the crowd. 11.45 the score for Alexander Kun, so he managed to gain 4/10 of difficulty, which is really positive, but unfortunately the hands coming down meant for an overall loss of 1/10 compared to his qualification score. Nonetheless, good that he could add that difficulty in. Here is Cameron Lynn of Great Britain, the reigning Scottish horizontal bar champion, and on virtually everything else as well, because he won 5 gold medals at those Scottish Championships. What a nice beginning that was. Can he keep this going? Straight Kachev, difficult skill, got his clearance over the bar right. Oh, big amplitude on the straddle Kachev, this is nice. He's talked about wanting to go that little bit beyond the perception of him. He's been under the radar, in his own words, for a while. He now wants to really start to make a name for himself. That is how to do it. Well done, Cameron Lim. What a lovely display. He is so much more confident now because of that brilliant display at the National Championships of Scotland. He's in the best shape that he's ever been in, that's clear. He made several finals at the British Championships, and he came here just as he came to the British saying, I am under the radar and I want to make my mark. That dismount was absolutely delightful. He also won full colours at the Northern European Championships last year. Gold on the pommel horse, silver with the Scottish team, and bronze on the parallel bars. And it's a nice moment for a young man who performed well at the Commonwealth Games, especially considering that he had a very serious ankle injury in the lead up to the competition. He was very upset with himself for how he performed afterwards, but it was a great accomplishment to perform as well as he did in a Scottish team that finished 5th. There's no doubt this was well beyond his qualification display. 12.85, that is actually a gain of a mark and a half for Cameron Lynn. He gains half a mark of difficulty and a full mark of execution. So, job very nicely done from the 20-year-old. Ilya Lyubimov of Israel, 6th best in qualification, 11.75. But we've just seen the 8th best qualifier really step up. Good height on the straight Kachev. Straddle Kachev has good hip clearance. Into his Kovac. Just perhaps lost a little of his form coming out of it, but he did get real amplitude. That's an enjoyable performance from Ilya Lyubimov of Israel. Young man at 21, and yet the oldest of the three we've seen so far in this final. Special moment for him performing in front of his home crowd. And a nice moment of bonhomie between him and Cameron Lynn. It's a score of 12.6 for Ilya Lyubimov. He's in second place. Same difficulty score as Cameron Lynn, but the execution not quite as tidy. So by a quarter of a mark, Lynn leads. Now, will all that change? This is Alexander Myakinin of the host nation Israel, bronze medalist at the European Championships in Mersin in 2020. And he won the World Cup gold medal in Baku earlier this year. 13.35 in qualification. He's capable of exciting things on this apparatus. His Cassina is performed successfully, as is his Coleman. Piked Kachev, nice pike position, really acute. Straddle Kachev also good. Looking compelling for a lead here, Alexander Myakinin. Got some intricate close control work as well. How is the landing going to be for Alexander Myakinin of Israel? Very good. That surely will lead. A special moment for Myakinin. This is not the first nation that he has represented internationally. He did compete for another nation before this, but all of his success has come for Israel. Cassino and then a Coleman. Big and complicated off-axis release and regrasp moves. He did very well at the World Cup in Baku, winning the title. He'd had a tough time in Doha before that. At the moment it is Great Britain's Cameron Lynn who leads with a score of 12.85. One imagines that we will see a different sort of leaderboard at the halfway point once this number is in for Alexander Myakinin of Israel. .6. Alexander Myakinin is comfortably at the top of the leaderboard. A gap of 3/4 of a mark ahead of Cameron Lynn. And already the warm-ups are pretty close to being completed for the second half of the final. We're looking at Spain's Nestor Abad. And the only gymnast remaining is Glenn Trebing from Germany, and then we'll resume the horizontal bar final. Meanwhile, here's a look back at what we've seen so far. The second half of the men's horizontal bar final. Christopher Mészáros of Hungary, the fourth best in qualification, and the proud owner of 2 gold medals already, plus more this weekend. He's done brilliantly. That was nicely performed. Rare to see the piked version of the Kovac, then the standard one. Very straight Kachev. Straddle Kachev, that had a nice sense of float across the bar. Pretty well controlled routine by and large from Christopher Mészáros. His execution in qualification 7.0. And certainly he's stepped up the game when the finals have taken place throughout this weekend. Well done to him on a really compelling display across the board in Tel Aviv. Didn't get an enormous amount of travel away from the apparatus as he dismounted. He is the reigning Hungarian all-around champion 3 years in a row, Mészáros. And also was on the podium in the horizontal bar final. Second place, 13.25. His execution absolutely unrecognisable from qualification. A gain of 3/4 of a mark for him. And he slots in neatly behind Miakinin. So that means that with 3 to go, it is Miakinin, Mészáros, Lin, 1, 2 and 3. Here is Tieno Diallo. We've got a Spanish double header now. 5th in qualification with 12.45. His Kovac is safely delivered. Straight Kachev. And the straddle variety. The original of the now varied family of skills created in the 1970s by Alexander Kachev. Very nice dismount from Tieno Diallo of Spain. Elegant twisting. Elegance as one always gets from this gentleman. Born in Conakry, in the capital of Guinea. But he calls Catalonia and Manresa home. Just in the last few months, we're starting to see an awful lot more of Tieno Diallo in finals and expecting him to be a contender. And there's no reason for him not to be a contender. He's a very fine gymnast. $13.15. Tieno Diallo goes into the bronze medal position. 3/10 ahead of Great Britain's Cameron Lynn. Diallo with 4/10 of difficulty. So although Lin had a higher execution score, he's actually got the best execution score, the British gymnast, of any of the gymnasts that we've seen so far in this competition. The difficulty of Diallo sufficient to nudge him in front. To Nestor Abad from Spain, the top performer in qualification with a score of 13.65. That would still put him into the lead despite the improvement from second best qualifier Alexander Miakinin. Over to the 30-year-old from Alicante. Just gets over with a brush, or almost it looked like, of the toes on the bar in the straight catch. F straddle and pike variety is much better clearance. He was more marginal in the first one. He gets lovely travel away from the apparatus to dismount. Good performance from Nestor Abad. Different sort of construction of routine from what we've seen so far. But this veteran knows what he's doing. He's a clever gymnast. And he's a reliable one when it comes to international competitions. We have a look back at this display from Nestor Abad. Well, we nearly do. Nice little still image though for you to enjoy. Two-time Olympian, the 30-year-old. One more routine to come after this, and it will be from the German gymnast Glenn Trebing. He looked pretty pleased with that display, Nestor Abad. Is he going to knock Tierno Diallo, his own international teammate, off the podium? The weight goes on for the gymnast who competed at his 7th World Championships last year. Tremendous accomplishment. .13.8 for Nestor Abad. He goes into the lead. 8.5 for his execution. A 5.3 difficulty score. That is lower by 2/10 than Alexander Miakinin, but his execution, the best that we've seen from anyone in this final. Now to Glenn Trebing of Germany, 3rd best in qualification with a score of 13. So he needs to go well beyond that if he is now to get onto the podium, because 3rd place is 13.25. And that brings to a close this horizontal bar final and all of the competition at the inaugural Tel Aviv World Challenge Cup of Artistic Gymnastics. The performance of Glenn Trebing, the last that we'll see. And has he managed to get himself into medal contention with that performance? Christopher Mezaros on 13.25 occupies bronze. Trebing was a quarter of a mark below that in qualification. A nicely executed routine, no question about that. The young man who used to compete alongside his twin Lewis. They trained together at a boarding school in Hanover. He is from an impressive sporting atmosphere. His partner Mia Lachenmacher, a top flight handball player. He's done it! He's done it! Glenn Trebing, 13.4. He's got himself a bronze medal. And really key there for Trebing was that quality of execution, 8.2. In just a moment or two, we've got 3 victory ceremonies to bring your way. These are the classified results in the men's horizontal bar competition. Glenn Trebing of Germany wins the bronze. Alexander Myakin of Israel takes silver, and Spain's Nestor Abad wins the title. We start with the victory ceremony for the men's the victory ceremony for the men's horizontal bar competition at the Tel Aviv World Challenge Cup of Artistic Gymnastics. The winner of the bronze medal, Germany's Glenn Trebing, a wonderful culmination to a successful weekend for him. The silver medal to Alexander Myakin of Israel, to the delight of the home crowd. But it's Spain's Nestor Abad who takes the title with a beautifully executed routine. The experienced gymnast, the oldest man in the final, the 30-year-old, a World Challenge Cup champion. And we will now have the national anthem of Spain.
Let's rise, ladies and gentlemen, for the national anthem of Spain.
the medalists in the men's horizontal bar competition at the first ever Tel Aviv World Challenge Cup of Artistic Gymnastics. And that brings to a close this first ever competition in World Challenge Cup Gymnastics in Tel Aviv, Israel. A memorable couple of days of finals action, and hopefully the start of a long legacy when it comes to Tel Aviv and World Challenge Cup Gymnastics. I hope you've enjoyed all of the action as the World Challenge Cup season really gathers pace, because there's another coming up next weekend. It's next stop Osijek. But until then, I'll say goodbye from Tel Aviv. I've been Ollie Hogben. It's been a pleasure having your company.